Hi folks, this is Seth Miller, Executive Director of the Innocence Project of Florida, and we wanted to come on today to give you an update post-election related to some of the ballot initiatives that, if you're in Florida, were on your ballot, and how the ones that passed affect our work here at the Innocence Project of Florida. And today we have 3 ballot initiatives of the many that passed that are of specific interest to us. And we'll start out with, I think, what is the most important one for our work, which is Amendment 4. As many of you know, in Florida, it's one of 3 states that before this past Tuesday disenfranchised permanently people who were convicted of felony convictions even after they finished their sentence and returned to society. And on Tuesday, on Election Day, Florida voters went to the polls and made an affirmative statement that said, look, when someone finishes their sentence and pays their debt to society, we need to let them come back into society as a full-fledged member and return their right to vote to them. So on Tuesday, by passing Amendment 4, Florida voters returned the right to vote to 1.4 million individuals in Florida. And this is really important because 1 in 10 Florida adults who could be eligible to vote were disenfranchised, and that number goes to 1 in 5 black voters or potential voters who were disenfranchised. So this is going to make a big difference to our electorate and making people feel like they are full-fledged members of society. Specifically for our clients, many of our clients who are exonerated of crimes have had past instances where they've been convicted of felonies, and it's hard enough to come back into society after you've been wrongfully incarcerated and spent many years away from your family and friends and community, and you return to a society that's completely different than the one that you left many years before. We want to try to remove barriers for those people to make a good, productive transition back into society, and one of those barriers is taking away the right to vote. So we're thrilled that for many of our clients who have been exonerated, who have been freed, who are innocent of crimes, but have past criminal records, that they will now be able to fully take part in creating the future of society that they live in. So we're thrilled that that passed. On the flip side, we have another amendment, Amendment 6, called Marcy's Law, which purports to be a victims' rights constitutional amendment that passed on Tuesday, on Election Day as well. And this amendment does a few things that are specific to our work here at the Innocence Project of Florida. As you know, what we do is we find innocent people in prison and we free them through the use of DNA testing or other type of new evidence of actual innocence. That is not a short process. It's actually very difficult. It takes many years of investigation and litigation to do that. This amendment would put incredible limits on the ability for us to do our work. Most notably, it says that all post-conviction cases have to be completed for non-capital cases within 2 years of the first appeal, or 5 years in a capital case. And if any of you have been to our website or seen any of our clients talk and met them, you know that most of these individuals have been in prison before the wrongfully incarcerated and been in prison before exoneration for sometimes decades. James Bain was in prison for 35 years before he was exonerated. Our position, and I think it's the position of prosecutors as well, is that when we have the ability to get to the truth in the heart of the matter, we need to take the time to do it in a deliberative fashion. If that takes 2 years or 5 years or 10 years to get done, then we need to do it. And we can't arbitrarily cut off the ability to find the truth when it means that if we do cut it off, we would not be able to right a miscarriage of justice. So many of our clients, if this was the law before, would not have been exonerated. Individuals who have been exonerated from death row might not have had the ability to do that and might have been executed in the meantime. And we're going to have to figure out how this works going forward and try to mitigate the impact of this on our work to free the innocent here at the Innocence Project of Florida. Lastly, there's a very technical amendment that was passed, Amendment 11. It was passed here on Tuesday by Florida voters. And the part that is really important, I think, for us is that Florida had this sort of crazy law that said in its constitution that said if the Florida legislature passes a law that changes a statute that, let's say, makes a sentence for a crime less punitive, they cannot apply it retroactively to people who had already been sentenced to a more harsh sentence under that law. So for example, if someone had a drug conviction and they got a 30-year sentence for that drug conviction, and then in the wisdom of the legislature they came around years later and said, well, we think that's too harsh, we're going to change that to a 5-year sentence, that person can't petition the court and say, hey, I'm still 10 years into my sentence, you got to give me relief, because now if I was convicted today, I'd only spend 5 years in prison. That has an incredible effect of crowding our prisons with people who are on sentences that are disproportionate to the crimes that they committed, as well as unequal to the sentences of those who commit the same crimes today. And so this amendment, I think, wisely changed that law, and what it'll allow people to do is to come into court and say, you've changed the law to make it more beneficial to people who are just like me, who are moving through the criminal justice process today, so I want the same benefit of that because that is only fair. And so we think this is going to do a great job at reducing mass incarceration in our Florida prisons. It's going to save Florida taxpayers money by having to lock up less people, and most importantly, it will bring justice to many, many, many people who are laboring under sentences that are far too harsh and disproportionate to the crimes that they committed. So voting is important, and we're thrilled that Florida voters went out and made their voices heard in the ways that they did, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon about more updates about our work. So thank you very much for listening.